doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it enters the room and says nothing. No explanation, no defense, no need to be understood. Because true power doesn't perform, it waits. You were taught to speak, to explain, to justify, as if every silence needed to be filled, or you'd be forgotten, ignored, misread. But what if silence isn't absence? What if it's strategy? Nietzsche once said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." So maybe the reason they think you're cold is because you've stopped speaking to be heard by those who never had the range to understand you. This isn't about being mysterious for the sake of ego. It's about restraint, discipline, precision. Because the moment you open your mouth, you give shape to your thoughts. And once they're shaped, they can be judged, challenged, used against you. But silence, it leaves nothing to hold on to. It forces others to project their own meaning. It makes them uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, you gain control. Not by domination, but by deflection. You become the mirror. And in your quiet, they confront their noise. You've seen them. The ones who sit back, watch, say little, but somehow control the whole room. They don't interrupt. They don't over-explain. They don't need to prove they know, because they already do. Their silence is not passive. It's calculated. It's loaded. It carries tension, the kind that makes others lean in, recalibrate, question themselves before speaking. Because in a world addicted to noise, the one who speaks least is the one most remembered. And here's the twist. The more you say, the more predictable you become. The more you speak, the more data you give others to doubt you, dismiss you, define you. But when you say less, you become a question they can't answer, and people fear what they can't figure out. That's the secret of silent power. It doesn't need to dominate the space. It becomes the space, not through volume, but through stillness, not through force, but through presence. Because true strength isn't measured by how loudly you speak, but by how little you need to. You're no longer fighting to be heard. You're listening to who needs to speak just to feel important. You're letting their words expose them, while your silence protects you. People assume silence is empty, that if you're not speaking, you must not have anything to say. But here's what they don't understand. Silence isn't the absence of thought. It's the sharpening of it. You don't speak to fill space anymore. You speak when it moves things. And until then, you wait. Because while they rush to be heard, you observe. While they try to impress, you analyze. While they overexpose their intentions, you remain unreadable. And in that unreadability, you become powerful. Not because you intimidate, but because you don't reveal your hand until it's time to win. This is the silent strategy of power. It's not avoidance, it's precision. You choose your words the way a surgeon chooses a scalpel, not to hurt, to impact. And those around you start to notice. They tread lighter, they listen harder, they wonder what you're thinking, because you're no longer so easy to read. That wondering, that mental weight they carry in your presence, it's influence, without pressure. If you've ever felt like saying less gave you more power, subscribe and hit the bell. Because in the next video, we'll explore how emotional detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you untouchable. Real silence doesn't start in the mouth. It starts in the mind. When you no longer need to win every conversation, when your value isn't built on being understood, when your peace isn't shaken by someone else's misunderstanding, that's when you stop speaking just to protect your image. You let people be wrong about you. You let assumptions exist without correction. You let the noise swirl around you, but you don't step into it, because the real power isn't in controlling the narrative. It's in not needing to. You don't engage every insult. You don't chase every clarification. You don't fear being misread by people who were never listening to understand in the first place. And when you stop explaining, you start commanding. Because presence is louder than defense. Stillness is more disarming than argument. And silence, when chosen, not forced, is a form of dominance most people will never understand. They'll call you cold, detached, arrogant, but really you're just centered, because you've stepped out of the reflex to prove. And now, every word you do speak lands like a hammer. No fluff, no filler, just truth. Delivered with surgical calm, they start to treat you differently, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped explaining yourself long enough for them to feel your boundary. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to argue. You don't even need to say no sometimes, because your absence already said it for you. That's what happens when silence becomes your signature. You create presence through absence, weight through restraint. They remember what you didn't say. They feel what you didn't react to. They carry the conversation even when you've already left the room. You've become a force without force, a decision maker without domination. You don't manipulate, you position. And the power you carry now, it's not reactive, it's deliberate. Because when your voice becomes rare, your words gain value. And when your emotions are no longer on display, your energy becomes a mystery they respect, even if they don't understand it. People stop arguing with you, not because you won, but because you refuse to play. You don't operate in their chaos. You don't explain your every move. You just move, calmly, cleanly, completely in control. You've become the kind of presence that rewrites the temperature of every space you walk into, not through noise, through neutrality. Now you don't need to be heard. You just need to be clear with yourself. You speak when it's necessary. You act without announcements. You show up like gravity, felt, not flaunted. You're not silent because you're afraid. You're silent because you're no longer controlled by the need to be understood. You know who you are. And because of that, you don't need everyone else to. That's why your silence feels heavy, why it unsettles, why it commands attention in rooms where others scream for it. Because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stands still, unshaken, unbothered, unapologetically unreadable. You've stopped leaking energy just to be liked. You've stopped filling space just to feel seen. You've stopped speaking just to be safe. And in that stillness, you've found something no performance ever gave you. Respect, not fear, not admiration, not validation, but a quiet kind of respect that only comes when you don't need anything from the room you walk into. So now I'll ask you this. What would happen if the most powerful thing you ever said was nothing at all? Tell me in the comments.